Title: aitah for saying my stepkids are not welcome here anymore. The house was silent except for the ticking of the clock on the kitchen wall, sharp, insistent, every second cutting through the tension like a knife. It was 10:47 p.m. and I was still staring at the shattered photo frame on the floor. It used to hold a picture of my husband, me, and his two kids, Evan 15 and Chloe 13. Now the glass glittered under the light, the photo torn clean in half. They had done it, not in anger, not by accident, but deliberately, a small act of rebellion that felt like a declaration of war. And that was the moment I realized I couldn't keep pretending everything was fine anymore. When I married Daniel 2 years ago, I knew he came with children. I was okay with that. Honestly, I thought I'd be great at being a stepmom. I bought them gifts, decorated their rooms when they stayed over, made sure their favorite snacks were stocked. I tried to build something, but they never tried back. Evan would barely speak to me. Chloe would roll her eyes every time I talked. Their mom, Danielle, yes, my husband's ex-wife, made sure to feed their resentment. She was trying to replace me. I once overheard her say on speakerphone, her voice dripping with venom. Still, I told myself, they'll come around. Then came the little incidents. Evan accidentally spilled juice all over my laptop, the one I use for work. Chloe borrowed my clothes and returned them stained with makeup. My perfume disappeared, my cat's tail got cut, they swore it was the door. And every time I brought it up, Daniel told me to stop overreacting. They're just kids, he said. No, Daniel, I said once, they're your kids, not just kids. Last weekend was supposed to be a quiet one. They came over Friday night, and I was determined to make it peaceful. I cooked dinner, lasagna, their favorite. Daniel was working late, so it was just me and them at first. They didn't touch the food. Instead, they laughed at their phones, whispering and looking up at me every now and then. At one point, Chloe asked, "Do you ever think about how you're not really family?" I froze. Before I could respond, Evan added, "Dad says you're dramatic. Mom says you'll leave soon anyway." That was it. Something inside me broke, not in a screaming way, but in a quiet, exhausted kind of way. I stood up, walked to the kitchen, and said, "You know what? You don't have to come here anymore. If you hate me that much, you're not welcome here. Not until you can treat me like a human being." They looked stunned. Then Chloe smirked. "I'm telling Dad." "Go ahead," I said, and went upstairs. Daniel came home later, furious. He shouted so loudly that the neighbors texted me to check if I was okay. "How could you say that to my children?" he demanded. "Because your children have made my life hell, Daniel," I said, shaking. "Because you've let them." He didn't answer that. Just looked at me like I'd grown horns. The kids didn't come back Sunday. Instead, Daniel went to his ex's place to talk things through. He didn't come home that night either. Now it's Tuesday. Has been sleeping at his brother's house since. He says he understands that I'm hurt, but that a real parent never gives up on their kids. Maybe that's true, but I'm not their parent. I never got to be. Edit. For context, I've never hit, insulted, or punished them. I've just existed in a house where I wasn't wanted. I've begged Daniel to do therapy with them. He said no. He told me, "You knew what you were signing up for." Maybe I did, but I didn't sign up to be disrespected in my own home. Edit to update. Daniel came by tonight to pick up a few things. He said the kids refused to visit if I'm around. His exact words were, "They don't feel safe here anymore, say." Because I told them they can't treat me like garbage. I told him that if he wants to prioritize their comfort over my dignity, fine, but I won't live in a house where I'm made to feel like the intruder. He didn't argue. He just sighed, grabbed his suitcase, and left. The silence afterward was deafening. Now I'm sitting in the living room staring at that broken photo frame again. I could glue it back together, but maybe it's better this way. A reminder that some things can't be fixed, only faced. So aitah for saying my stepkids aren't welcome here anymore. That night, after Daniel left, I sat in the dark living room for hours. The only light came from the street lamp outside, its glow cutting through the curtains and falling across the empty couch where he used to sit. I could still smell his cologne in the air, faint, mixed with the sour scent of old arguments. For the first time in 2 years, I realized how quiet the house felt without him, without them. At first, the quiet felt good, clean, a relief, but as the hours passed, it shifted into something else. heavy and hollow, like a space carved out inside my chest. I wanted to cry, but the tears wouldn't come. Instead, I just sat there, staring at my reflection in the black TV screen. Who was I now? The woman who pushed her husband's kids away? The woman who made her family fall apart? Or the woman who finally stood up for herself? After 2 years of being treated like a stranger in her own home. The next morning, I woke up to a phone buzzing on the nightstand. My mother. I almost didn't answer. I already knew what she'd say. She's from that generation where you make it work no matter how miserable you are. But I answered anyway. She didn't even say hello before starting. Your sister called me. She said Daniel's kids aren't allowed in your house anymore. Is that true? Yes, Mom, I said quietly. She sighed. Sweetheart, they're just children. You need to be the adult in this. I have been the adult, I said, my voice shaking. For 2 years. I've been patient, forgiving, invisible. But they keep crossing lines, and Daniel keeps pretending it's fine. I can't do it anymore. There was silence on the line. Then she said something that stuck with me all day. Maybe you should have married a man without baggage. And then she hung up. Around noon, Daniel texted, "Can we talk tonight? I think we need to figure out where to go from here." I stared at the message for a while before replying, "Okay." He came by at 7. The kids didn't come with him. When he walked in, he looked exhausted. Eyes sunken, jaw tight. He didn't sit right away, just stood near the window, staring at the framed picture of his kids on the shelf. "I can't believe we're here," he said finally. "Neither can I whispered. He turned to me. "Do you even realize what you did? They think you hate them." "I don't hate them," I said. "I hate how they treat me. I hate how you let it happen." He sighed, rubbing his face. "They're teenagers, Anna. They're hurting. So am I snapped. "I've been trying to build something real with them, but every time I reach out, they slap my hand away. And you? You just keep telling me to be patient." He didn't respond. Then he said something that broke me. "Maybe this isn't going to work anymore." My chest tightened. "You mean us?" He nodded slowly. "I can't choose between you and them." I laughed, that sharp, hollow kind of laugh that escapes when something inside you snaps. "You already did, Daniel. You just don't want to admit it." He didn't argue. He just grabbed his jacket and left. For days, I barely left the house. The silence that once felt freeing now felt suffocating. I'd catch myself reaching for my phone to text Daniel something small. A grocery list, a meme, a picture of the cat, and then remember that those little pieces of normal were gone. Then, one evening, there was a knock at the door. It was Chloe. She stood there awkwardly, her hoodie too big, her hair pulled up like she didn't care. For a moment, I thought she might be lost for words, but then she said, "Dad's at work. I just wanted to grab the stuff I left here." I nodded and let her in. While she moved around the house, collecting her things, I stayed quiet. I didn't want to start another argument. But when she came back to the living room, she paused by the broken photo frame I hadn't cleaned up yet. She looked at it, then at me. "Did you keep that?" I shrugged. "Couldn't throw it away. It's still us. Just not whole anymore." She looked down, silent for a long time. Then, almost too softly, she said, "We didn't mean for it to go this far." I blinked. "What do you mean?" She shifted uncomfortably. "Mom told us not to like you. She said you'd try to replace her. Evan just went along with it. I did too. It was like a game. To see how far we could push before you'd break." Her voice cracked at the end. Something in me melted. "Not completely, but enough." "You did break me," I said quietly, "but not the way you think." I didn't stop caring. I just stopped hoping. She didn't answer, just nodded and left. A week later, Daniel called. His voice was calmer this time. "I talked to the kids," he said. "Chloe told me what she said to you. I didn't realize how bad it got." I said nothing. He sighed. "They want to apologize. Evan too. I don't know if you're ready for that, but maybe we could all sit down. No pressure." I thought about it for a long moment before answering. "Maybe," I said finally, "but it has to be here, in my home, and you need to promise me something, Daniel. If this turns into another ambush, if they start again, I walk away for good." He agreed. That Sunday they came, all 3 of them, Daniel, Chloe, and Evan, standing in the doorway like ghosts. The air was thick with tension. We sat around the dining table, the same one where Aitah served them dinner the night they mocked me. No food this time, just truth. Evan spoke first, eyes fixed on the table. "I was a jerk. I thought you were trying to take Dad away from us. I didn't think about how it made you feel." Chloe nodded beside him. I said things I didn't mean. I didn't want things to change. I swallowed the lump in my throat. Things always change, Chloe. That's not my fault. But hurting people won't stop it from happening. She nodded again, tears in her eyes. Daniel reached across the table and took my hand. Can we try again? For the first time in months, I didn't feel anger. Just exhaustion, mixed with the faintest trace of hope. Maybe, I said, but it has to be different this time. No pretending. No more me being the outsider. He squeezed my hand. I promise. That night, after they left, I stood in the doorway watching their car disappear down the street. The house was quiet again. But this time, the silence didn't feel empty. It felt paused, like something fragile might grow there again if I was brave enough to let it. For the first time in a long time, I picked up the pieces of the broken photo frame from the floor. I didn't fix it, not yet. But I put the photo back on the shelf anyway, because maybe some things don't have to be perfect to be worth keeping. It's been 6 months since that night at the dining table. The night Daniel and his kids came back. Not as a family, not yet, but as people trying to understand where everything went wrong. Since then, life has been cautiously normal. Daniel moved back in 2 months later, slowly, piece by piece. At first, just a few clothes, then his books, then his coffee mug, the one that says "One Dad." Though for a long time I couldn't look at it without bitterness curling in my stomach. The kids started visiting every other weekend. At first, the silence between us was unbearable. They'd stay in their rooms most of the time, and meals felt like quiet negotiations, polite but empty. But little by little, the ice began to melt. It started with something small. Chloe asking me for help on a school project, then Evan fixing the leaking faucet in the kitchen without me even asking. And then, one Sunday morning, I woke up to the sound of laughter. Real laughter. I went downstairs and found Daniel and the kids making pancakes. Flour everywhere. Music playing too loud, the kitchen a mess. Evan was teasing Daniel for burning one, and Chloe looked up, saw me in the doorway, and for the first time in what felt like forever, smiled. "Morning," she said softly. It wasn't much, but it was something. Still, things weren't magically healed. Some wounds don't disappear, they just scar over and you learn to live around them. There were still moments of tension, like the day Daniel's ex-wife, Melissa, called. I only overheard his side of the conversation, but it was enough to know she wasn't happy that her kids were spending time in that house again. That night, Daniel came to bed quiet. I could tell he'd been fighting with her. "She says she doesn't trust you," he said eventually. I felt the familiar sting of anger. "She's the one who told them to hate me, Daniel." "I know," he said, "but she's still their mother. And I'm your wife," I said. "I deserve respect too." We didn't talk much after that, but the silence wasn't explosive this time. It was tired, like two people who had fought this battle too many times to still draw blood. One afternoon, a few weeks later, I found Chloe sitting in the backyard. She had her earbuds in, but when she noticed me, she paused her music and gestured for me to sit beside her. After a long moment, she said, "You know, I used to hate this garden." I smiled a little, because I planted it. She smirked, embarrassed. "Kind of. I thought it was your way of making the house more yours. Like you were trying to erase Mom's memory." "I wasn't," I said softly. "I just wanted it to feel alive again." She nodded. "Yeah, I get that now." We sat there for a while, watching the wind move through the leaves. Then she said something that nearly broke me. "I don't hate you anymore." I looked at her, really looked at her, and saw not the angry teenager who used to throw words like knives, but a girl who was finally old enough to understand regret. "Thank you," I whispered. That night, Daniel came home late. He looked lighter. "What's going on?" I asked. He smiled, the first genuine smile I'd seen from him in months. "Chloe told me she wants to spend the summer here, full-time." I froze. "Really?" He nodded. "She said she feels like we're finally a real family again." My throat tightened. I didn't know what to say. Daniel came over, sat beside me on the couch, and took my hand. "I know I failed you," he said quietly. "I should have protected you from all of it. From the kids, from Melissa, from my own fear. But I'm trying, Anna. I swear I'm trying." For a long time, I didn't respond. I just looked at our intertwined hands. His strong and warm, mine trembling slightly. "Trying is good," I said finally. "But we both have to want the same thing." "And what's that?" "A home that doesn't feel like a battlefield." He nodded, eyes glistening. "Then that's what we'll build." Summer came slowly. long, golden evenings, and they're thick with the smell of cut grass. Evan got a part-time job at a car wash and started saving for college. Chloe spent hours helping me in the garden, planting sunflowers that grew tall enough to brush against the windows. Sometimes Daniel would join us, beer in hand, watching us with that quiet kind of joy that looks like peace. It wasn't perfect. Not even close. There were still arguments. Days when Melissa's name hung like a shadow over dinner. Days when Evan slammed doors. But there were also mornings filled with laughter, shared breakfasts, inside jokes. One night, Daniel came into the kitchen while I was doing dishes. He wrapped his arms around me from behind and whispered, "Do you still regret telling them they weren't welcome?" I thought for a moment before answering. "No," I said softly, "because that's what it took for them to understand that I am part of this family too." He kissed my shoulder. "You're the reason we're still standing." I didn't reply, just smiled and watched the reflection of the two of us in the window. A few weeks later, I found something unexpected. Chloe had left her sketchbook on the coffee table. Out of curiosity, I flipped it open, and there, between half-finished drawings, was a pencil sketch of our house. It wasn't perfect. The lines were uneven, the perspective a little off, but in the front yard, she had drawn us, me, Daniel, her, and Evan. And underneath, in tiny handwriting, she had written, "Home doesn't have to be perfect. It just has to be real." I closed the sketchbook and felt tears rise, not from sadness, but from something deeper. For the first time in years, I realized I wasn't just surviving this family. I was part of it. Months later, on an ordinary September evening, I finally replaced the broken photo frame that had sat empty on the shelf for so long. This time, the photo inside wasn't from the past, it was new. A picture of all of us in the garden, smiling, sunflowers in the background. The glass shimmered in the light as I set it down. It wasn't about pretending everything was perfect anymore. It was about finally believing that broken things can grow back stronger if you give them the chance. Final scene, the house that stayed. It's been years since the fights, since the slammed doors and the tears that seemed endless. The house has aged, paint fading on the porch, the garden overgrown in some places, wild in others, but it feels alive. Anna stands by the kitchen window, watching the sunrise spill gold across the yard. The sunflowers are blooming again, tall and bright like they never stopped trying. Behind her, the house hums with quiet sounds, the ticking clock, the faint laughter of Daniel still half asleep upstairs. For the first time in a very long time, she feels still, not numb, not waiting, just still. On the kitchen table sits a small box. Inside are photos of Chloe's graduation, of Evan's wedding, of their messy Sunday dinners that turned into long, joyful nights. Anna takes one out. It's from last summer. All of them sitting in the garden, smiling, the sky soft with sunset. She studies it for a long moment, then whispers to no one in particular, "We made it." Later that morning, Daniel joins her outside. He brings coffee. Hers just the way she likes it. They sit together on the porch steps, wrapped in an old blanket. "You know," he says softly, "I used to worry this house would never feel like home again." Anna smiles faintly. "It didn't. Not for a while." He nods, eyes distant. "But you never left." She looks at him. "Because leaving isn't the same as saving yourself." He laughs quietly. "And you saved us." She leans her head against his shoulder, closing her eyes as the wind stirs the sunflowers. The camera, if there were one, would pull back slowly. The couple on the porch, the garden alive with color, the house standing steady against the morning light. Anna's voice, calm, older, wiser, echoes softly in the air. Sometimes love isn't about how long it lasts. It's about how deep it roots itself and how gently it lets you grow again. The frame freezes for a moment on the porch, two coffee cups side by side, steam rising in the sunlight, and then, slowly, the screen fades to black. The end.